Cool. Well, nothing like a little fire drill before we present. We think that there might be some RF issues with other clickers. So, I appreciate you all being here today. Thank you for choosing to be with us this morning. You're in NTA102. That's new to AWS 102. We're going to talk about some cloud migration strategies and for customers who are new to AWS. John has a wealth of experience, and he's going to talk a lot about kind of his plan and his way that he thinks about moving into the cloud. And so John is the Chief Product and Technology Officer for a company in Chicago called CCC Information Services, or Intelligent Solutions, sorry. And I met John when I was an SA with AWS. I was the SA assigned to his account, and I worked really closely with him and his team to kind of evaluate what the migration would look like, help support it from an AWS resourcing side, and I thought John had a lot of experience, a lot of good guidance that we've actually gone and taken to other customers with AWS, and we're kind of packaging it up now into this presentation. So turn it over to you. Do you want to?
Great. Thanks, Justin. So I've been through several migrations into AWS, and through that journey, I've heard a lot of questions. People at the macro level of course, it's completely obvious why we should move from our data center into AWS until you have to sell your board, your executive team, you have to ask for money. You actually have to build an operational plan that is, with close to as 100% certainty that it's going to work as possible. And I would say lots of other objections that you hear along the way. And so what we've done in this presentation is assemble a group of best practices that we've kind of seen, that I've kind of seen over the last 15 years maybe, of building as much as possible a rock solid plan to get you from the ideation of, gee, we should move into AWS to, yeah, we moved into AWS last year, and make that as successful as possible. Next slide. So today, a big part of the objections that you hear is, how in the heck are we ever going to pay for this? It's not inexpensive to move. And then even if once you do decide, that you have buy-in, and a large part of getting buy-in is giving confidence to those that have control of money that you can actually pull this off, that they're not just going to pay this money and then somehow it's not going to happen. So we're going to talk about the process that works, tried and true, to actually get through a buy-off on getting a business case approved, getting money approved, setting up an operational plan, providing governance for that operational plan, expecting hiccups along the way, because they will occur, and those hiccups can either be financial or operational, is trying as much as possible to make sure that you choose the best partners, because you will have many, many options for that, and everybody will be knocking on your door. And aligning your internal team, providing proper updates on that, and then how do you actually get started? So, and then advance it as time goes by. So that's what we're going to cover today as best we can in the next 45 minutes or so.
And we're going to leave a lot of time to the end, so we encourage you to think about questions, ask those at the end. We'll probably have mics to go around.
So the big first part is, how are we ever going to pay for this? This is not a $25,000 expense that you can just put through and get approved. This is a multi-million-dollar expense. And then what is even, how do you actually even execute on a strategy to do that? So first thing we want to talk about is who do you have to sell in this process? Not all companies are the same. So how many people in this room ultimately have ownership that's through private equity? Okay. How many of you have ownership that's you're a public company? And how many of you are privately owned but not through PE? All right, so there's some of each. Ultimately, the selling to get money is not a one-time thing. So it's very, very, very important to know. It's just like if your significant other sat down at dinner with you and said, you know what? I think that we need to redo the entryway into our house, and I think it would be really cool if we bought some Picassos, and I found some that's a couple $1 million that we could get started with, and I'll go buy them this afternoon. Like, that's never going to work. That process is never going to get a sign-off on that you come in with this idea and you get millions of dollars of capital coming your way just because you're nice people. So you have to think through, what are the value propositions of the people inside your company that have money? So first, well, I'll start with this concept that you're going to have to write a business plan. There is no way you're going to get approval for this without a business plan. A business plan is not a 100-page document. In fact, the latest business plan that we used at CCC to get approval was maybe 3 or 4 slides. It's a high-level concept of what you're going to do and how do you get, give confidence that you can actually pull this off. So if we can go back to the other slide.
Sure.
We got a problem with audio advancing on us here. So the first thing you have to start thinking about is who are you going to have to sell in this process? Let's take private equity. So if you're not familiar with private equity, the Vista Capitals of the world and those types of companies. Private equity is an investment opportunity that's held by the rich and famous so that you can invest your money, usually in the tens of millions to hundreds of millions or more of money into a fund. The private equity company will use their expertise to buy companies that they think will at least double their money, double your money, in usually a 5-year time period. Sometimes the business plan will pay you more than double your money, sometimes it's slightly less, but the 5-year time period is usually the general assertion. The other thing you have to realize is where your company is at on that journey. So if you're a part of a company that's owned by private equity, the first 3 years of your company is being spent making your company look to grow, whether that's growing your top-line revenue, growing your customer base, growing your operating income. You're usually growing as fast as you can in those 3 years. And then once you get to that point of where you're steady stream growing, the last 2 years turns to, for the private equity point of view, turns to what do we have to do to sell this company? So a private equity-owned company is not something that lasts in perpetuity. There is a buy of the company, and there is an end. Whether you as an employee realize that or not, that is going to be the case. So if you're in the front end part of that journey, and you're owned by private equity, then what you're trying to sell to the people that have money, namely your owners, is the fact that moving into AWS will actually help you accelerate this journey that they're on to either grow your business, become more agile, move more quickly, react to customers more quickly, get rid of security problems that you might have. Every single thing that might stand in your way to help that scalability is what you're going to do to sell the benefit of moving into AWS. If you're in the last 2 years of that private equity ownership and the company is getting ready to sell, you're also playing on that aspect. They're trying to make you as profitable as possible. They're trying to make sure that there's no time bombs inside your company that would cause it not to be able to be sellable. So if Justin and I were looking to buy a company and we said, wow, that asset looks really good, but it's in the data center and it's going to have all these problems. Nobody wants to buy a company in the data center, by the way. So it's going to be to the private equity's advantage to have the company running inside AWS, and you use that information as part of your sales pitch if you're in the final part of that journey. So again, and it doesn't have to be done. So if it's the last year, if it's year 4 out of 5, you could say, look, if somebody's going to buy us, they're going to see what we're doing, and they're going to see that it's a 2-year journey, and they'll go ahead and buy us knowing that we're halfway through this journey with an end state in mind. If you're in a public company, it's important to understand that you have to deliver quarterly results. So you can't just say, hey, we're going to take a one-time hit for $15 million to move into AWS. That's never, ever, ever going to go through. You have to plan out, one, as a public company, the thing that scares public companies the worst, by the way, is the fact that, that they think that somehow that they could hit by ransomware, security problems, anything around the security aspect is going to make a board of directors of a public company open their eyes wide. So and you'll see part of our business plan that I've used in the last couple of companies. If you're part of a public company, it's always, and this is not just a pitch, it is always beneficial to play up the aspects of what types of security mechanisms that you get by being part of the AWS system. So, know that you're going to play up the security risk angle. Know that you're going to play up the fact that over the course of time, your costs are going to come down. So if you're delivering quarterly results, at some point in time in the future, they have to steadily start getting better, 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 better. So you want to play up the fact that you're going to be more agile. You're going to be able to deliver your assets into the cloud more quickly. You're going to be able to cut cost over time, not necessarily today, not even a year from now, but over time, you'll be able to cut cost. And we're going to show you in the slide deck some of the techniques you use to actually cut cost. And then lastly, I'll say on here, understand what your CEO's goals are for the company. Almost certainly, as you build your business plan, there will be things within going into AWS that fits into your company strategy. Do not come in from day one automatically just talking about cost savings and these types of things without understanding what your company is trying to do. Develop messages that sell into that. And then typically also try to understand your board a bit. Plant seeds in with the board as early as possible. All right, sorry, that was a long first slide, but it's a really important one. Let's keep going. So I talked a little bit about a business plan. The business plan does have to include many things. Agility benefits is a huge thing. For CCC, we had multiple environments. We had data center. We had a performance environment that was not indicative of either the development environment or production. And it slowed us down. All of these things slowed our ability down to develop software, and we're a SaaS company. So you have to play up the agility benefits. In fact, I would always use that as bullet number 1. No leadership team, ownership team ever looks, they always look at their team and they're always thinking, how can we get more from this team? How can we move faster? We feel so slow at times. Having this as a number 1 benefit of selling your plan is very important. Again, I talked about the security one. Do not diminish the value of that you're going to get inside your company. And you can plant little seeds. Like we used Oracle on-prem. Anybody in here use Oracle? chances are by just industry standards, as many people in here use Oracle. So on Oracle on-prem, Oracle wanted to charge us $2 million a year just to add in some anti-ransomware features into the database. Turns out you get that for free as part of AWS. So again, playing the long game of building your AWS business plan, plant the seed when you get the $2 million price tag to say, look, Oracle is just one of our vendors. They want to charge us $2 million a year for this. We get this for free as we move to AWS. And then lastly, play the cost angle. So I would say never lead with cost, but everybody wants to know what it's going to look like when we're done. And many people will say, well, it might even be more, John. You know, data centers, you know, we can amortize over 5 years, you know, but we'll show you in other slides that that's not necessarily the case, and there are some key assertions that can lower that over time. Here is the top level. This is the first slide of the business plan that we most recently used at CCC. So you'll see on the left, this is probably pretty indicative of what you have inside your company. You got a data center. You got a bunch of databases and middleware that you run internally. You got a team of people that has to run those. And then you have a big IT staff. You know, I talk to people, CIOs, and they brag about how big their teams are. John, we have 600 people in IT. That is not a great thing to a board or a PE ownership or somebody else. That is not a flag that you want to wave. So you'll see here to the right, number one slide is to say, hey, look, you know, it costs us 7% of revenue to run all this stuff, but in the end, after we get to steady state, best in class is 5%. And just so everybody in here knows, that is an industry data point. Best in class IT for running inside your operations is 5%, and that's what you should strive for. And you might say, Jesus, I'm at 12%, I'm never going to get to 5%. Well, again, 5% is an industry best if you're in, you know, but you get the picture. You're trying to move from some percentage of revenue to something that's closer to the 5%. And for us, again, the key benefits that we placed were, you'll see on this slide as you read it, we don't lead with costs. I didn't lead with costs. I haven't done this in any time that I've ever moved into AWS. I've never led with costs. Sure, it's a part of what it is, but you play up the benefits of velocity, security, agility. You have, you know, at least in our case, we had 3 major assertions. One is we're going to run inside AWS. 2 is we're heavily going to leverage past services, and it's a very key thing that we go forward with. So running your database as a service, running SageMaker as a service, running Kubernetes, if possible, as a service. So always using managed services provided by Amazon as part of your stack. Don't think I'm going to have this giant IT team, or even small IT team, pivot to all of a sudden just run my current infrastructure inside AWS. If you do that, that's bad on you for not really planning that vision to not just get to a new platform, but to advance it and modernize it as you go. And we'll talk more about that as well. Next slide. Okay, so as we're on this journey, and we're trying to learn all the secrets. You're here in this meeting to learn some secrets about what to use to not only sell your plan, but when we get into operationalizing, how do you make sure it actually goes successfully? One is, again, socialize, socialize, socialize from the beginning. Start looking for little seeds that you can plant. It's going to take you a while to do this sell. This is not going to, it's just like the Picasso example. It's not going to happen in a day or a week. It's going to take a little bit of time to get it approved. The second is, if you don't know much about finance, you need to learn, you need to go to your favorite finance person and figure out what capitalization is. So in our particular journey, every journey that I've been on, usually the resources that you're using to modernize you and take you to a new compute platform can be capitalized over a series of years. So what that means is if it's going to cost you $10 million in people to do a lot of the work that gets you ready to move, you don't have to take the $10 million expense as it occurs. You can capitalize that over a 3-year time period or different, whatever your capitalization period is. So for us, a $10 million expense turns into a little over $3 million a year that we actually hit on the P&L. So again, find your finance person inside the company, tell them that this is a modernization exercise, and ultimately your company runs by your P&L, not usually your cash flow unless you're right on the edge of cash flow. So capitalization is your friend. It advances that cost of the move out such that it can be taken over multiple years. All right, this next one is super important, and that is that you have to believe that managed infrastructure is a good thing. If you believe that having a giant team and running infrastructure yourself is a good thing, good luck to you on this cloud journey and getting approved as you go forward. So Amazon builds an amazing set of managed services. Everything they do, like RDS, it's a database, but I don't need, for us, we had a giant team of database engineers to run Oracle inside our facility. But when I move into AWS and we have RDS, which is a managed service, I don't need that giant team of people. Yes, I still need people, but I don't need a whole team of people to run that infrastructure because Amazon is picking up a lot of that work. That's a really important thing. You really have to believe this as we go forward. And this occurs not only, in this session across Las Vegas this week, you'll hear about a ton of managed services that Amazon offers. And I would say investigate as many of those as possible, see which ones apply inside your business, and use those because that is an opportunity to actually cut your cost over time. And this is another key inside baseball point. The biggest cost savings of moving into AWS over time is going to be taking your headcount down. That is a really key assertion. And then the other thing is I talked about that money to use to spend to actually get you going. Remember that as you're on this, you still got your on-prem, and meanwhile you're building out this AWS environment, that's dual expense. But luckily, AWS has this really cool thing called MAP, which Justin's going to tell you a little bit about now.
Yeah, so MAP is the Migration Acceleration Program. It's a program that offers funding to help cover that double bubble, the cost of having infrastructure in both data center and AWS. And the plug here is that there's actually more funding mechanisms that you can take advantage of, right? If you're part of a PE firm, you may have PE incentives attached to that company, and that could also be another funding mechanism to drive costs down. If your PE company isn't part of our program, talk to your account manager, right? Your account manager is there to help. They want to help give you the most incentives possible. And there are account managers that actually have gotten other PE firms into the program that weren't there before. So they're here to help. If you don't take advantage of these funding mechanisms, you're really missing out.
Next slide, and this is our last slide on money. This is a slide that was taken from our board deck. Some of the numbers were slightly changed. But it shows you that on the left-hand side, there is an outlay of expense to do this move. It is absolutely, in the first line of this is kind of the key. One-time investment of $13 million drives $10 million per year of reduced spend. So again, any board, any owner, anybody getting ready to sell a company, anybody getting ready to ramp a company, they do care about the economics. So as much as we sell agility, security, and all that other stuff, they will care what it costs. So this, and I've never been with a board or an executive team or a CFO where this wasn't seen as dramatically positive. And so again, I'll just give you the key takeaway. $13 million, at least for us, for the expense on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, you see that our annual expense in this area is roughly $50 million, and then it drops by $10 million. So that's a hugely positive slide, regardless of your ownership model. If you're a public company, it gives your CEO and CFO vision to say how the company's going to do better in the future to improve operating margin. If you're private equity, it gives you, line of sight to, hey, for every $10 million that I save, that's a multiple that I can get back when I sell the company. So these are very important. Next slide. So now let's assume it's been sold. You have the business plan's done, you got it. Now let's talk about how you actually move. So the first thing is you have to decide who you're going to partner with. And trust me, once everybody knows you're moving, everybody's going to knock on your door to figure out how they can help you. Everybody is going to knock on your door. I probably had 100 companies want to help us move into AWS. And I will tell you the easy choice for us has always been just choose AWS as your partner. AWS has a professional services wing. As soon as you walk into a board meeting and you say, and they say, well, who's going to help you do this? And you say, Amazon's going to help us. No more questions. When we sold into my executive team, Justin was in the room. The CEO said, Justin, they asked him about 5 questions. He was there. Yep, we've reviewed the plan. Yep, this is typical of other customers. Yep, this is not the first time we've done this.
We've had bigger migrations, right?
Yes, yeah. And it makes it easy. The second thing you want to choose is you need secondary partners, and you want somebody that's actually looking after your best interest. Don't choose somebody that is in it just for how much billable hours they can get. Choosing a partner. We chose a company called Evolutio. They're looking after our best interest, but they work essentially under AWS.
Yeah, I would just add on to this that I like to refer to SAs at AWS. I thought of myself as this was a free consultant, right? I'm a consultant with no billable hours. I'm not trying to chase the next SOW. When John came in and really let me into the company and into these teams, I could really help. And I helped so much that I reduced the number of customers I was looking after. I focused more on John. I got to help more of his teams on different problem sets, and that really drove a lot of my personal work satisfaction. So if you can do that, if you can let your AWS SA in, I would encourage you to do that. You're going to get a lot of benefit, and it's at no cost to you, right? So.
That's a really important part. It's free. Using, and I can't tell you how much time I used at Justin's. I never paid Amazon for Justin's time. If I said, hey, this is the architecture that we're looking at to use RDS, and this is how many IOPS we need, and this is the size of our databases, review this and tell me if you think this is good. You essentially get that for free. That's a free value that the SAs bring. Next slide. All right, so now we have a partner, we've sold the board, we have to operation the plan. Internally, you have to stage it. So let's just be upfront. You're not going to just move everything at one time. That's too much risk. You want to be able to validate your approach, and Justin's going to talk through what we did for that and how he was a big part of that. You should also have a steering committee. You have to, as you go along, there's going to be naysayers inside your company. As obvious as it is that you should be inside AWS, there's always going to be people inside the company who think you're going to fail. And so you want them actually to be on your steering committee. Bring them in as close as possible. Let them be there from day one. If they're on the steering committee, they become an active part of your process. So you definitely have to start with a steering committee that includes your CEO and CFO. It is not a minor thing to move into AWS public cloud as part of your core IT systems. You have to sell through the board, your executive team and up the board. They should be a part of the process. Bring them into steering committees, 1 meeting a month. Use OKRs to measure monthly progress, and let that steering committee help guide your path along the way. And trust me, not everything's going to go great. So if the CEO is there, the CFO is there, you've bought in, you're spending a lot of money for this move, they want it to succeed at that point, even though there might be other people inside your company that don't. So for us, we had a giant part of our business, which was our parts business, and Justin, maybe you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that was one of the first times I was brought in, was to really just try to get our arms around the whole parts project. And I worked with a lot of people at CCC and AWS to just try to get your arms around this in terms of how many servers are there, right? Like, what are the specs? What do they need? What's the performance, right? Are some of these servers over provisioned, under provisioned? We went through a lot of calories around dependency mapping, right? Which applications talk to which other applications? Where were the jobs in the background that were dependent upon some other downstream system? That was a huge thing, and we kind of started to find, and I even represented this a little visually, what were those areas where we could start to pull off parts of those applications? And what we did is we took an early pilot of the parts project, and the parts application is something that CCC relies very heavily on. It's a big part of their business that runs their business, so it had a lot of visibility, and we knew that if we got that right, we could basically tackle anything else.
Yeah, and it's just to give you guys scope inside of what we were moving. We had 6,000 servers, a petabyte of databases, and we run about 5 billion transactions a day through our systems. And that's what we were moving out of on-prem or private cloud into public cloud. So it's not baby systems. 6,000 servers is a significant amount, and you have to take that in steps. Even if it's very much interlinked, which ours is, the parts business is one you could pull out. It validates your approach. It lets even the naysayers understand that, wow, this can be done. You're going to find some things that didn't go the way you wanted them to, and it helps you get out those kinks before you scale it out. Next slide. So here's things that will bite you if you're not paying attention. The first is, and I'm going to jump to the second pillar here. Remember we talked about you've got your on-prem, and then you've got your environment that you're going to be moving to in AWS. So you're running dual environments for a while. I would say most contemporary vendors will provide you some leeway such they won't double charge you. They understand that you're in this transition to moving. And then there are vendors that see this as an opportunity to charge you. And I would say, I don't want to name them in here, but traditional on-prem vendors that you've probably worked with for a decade or more, take this as an opportunity to charge you for this new environment that you have while it's being built up. And that just really pisses you off, in all honesty. So try to understand up front as much as possible. Let your partners, all your software partners, know that you're moving into the cloud, and ask them how their model works to use that software in your test environment before it goes live. Because otherwise, they will try to stick you with some very large bills. And it's best to figure that out actually up front if you can. For us, in this case, you try to hit the top ones, but we had 100 partners. So we didn't check with them all, and some of them try to stick us at the end with a big bill. The next thing is you're moved from a fixed compute environment to an elastic model, which means you're paying for compute on demand. Yes, there are great benefits. You can scale up if you have a seasonal business and you're now in holiday season and now you need more compute. You can scale up and use that. That's a huge benefit to going into AWS. But it's also a huge downside if you don't understand what that scaling is going to cost you. You find that every decision that a developer makes in terms of how they architect a solution, a deployment, will have a financial impact. So FinOps becomes something that maybe previously was viewed as a more financial type job into something that's really more of an operational type job, which is to educate your technical team on what decisions they make and what type of impact they have. So whether you're running with reserved instances or serverless or running managed services or running EC2 instances, et cetera, what is the actual cost that you have for doing those things? What we would run into, and my finance business partner is sitting right here in the front row, and he will tell you, we saw fluctuations of $500,000 to $1 million a month based off not really understanding the decisions that we were making. We weren't even making decisions. Somewhere down in the tech team was making decisions that you would be like, oh man, I just found out that cost us $250,000, that decision that we made last month. So we had to quickly adopt a practice to educate the entirety of our development organization on, hey, here's all the decisions that you make, and here's the ones that will cost us a lot more money, either through memory, IOPS, size, EC2, et cetera. Another post-pilot must-have is tell everybody that you're doing this stuff. A lot of people are like, oh my gosh, my customers are so conservative. They don't want to know that we're moving into AWS. Trust me, I have the largest insurance companies in the United States, in the world, that effectively wanted us to move in AWS. Like the most conservative companies ever. And as soon as I said, yeah, Dan, we're moving into AWS, they're like, oh, this is great news. It opens up all these possibilities. Over time, you can go active-active. You can do this. We can even hook up APIs to get real-time observability, to see what's going on with our specific response time. They view this as a positive. And so, in fact, I've never had a company take it as a negative. Even in the very, very, very most conservative, as soon as you start telling them the benefits that they get out of it, they will want more updates from you. So it's a long-term benefit to them, short and long-term benefit to them, and that, again, helps you along this journey. And then the last slide that we have is, so if you think about it, you've gone through the journey, you've built a business plan, you've chosen your partners, you've set up a governance committee, set a governance system which includes OKRs and steering committee. You've chosen a pilot. You've executed the pilot. You've learned some stuff. You've made some changes. You understand that over the course of time that you are going to have to cut costs. You're ready to go. And you're still scared to death. So I can tell you that whenever you get ready to move, you can have prepared as much as you want. It's still going to be scary for you. But I will tell you, if you've gone through all this readiness, it will pay off. And Amazon will have your back. So before you go live, make sure you have enterprise support from Amazon. There's a lot of difference between having that and not having it. You have enterprise support, they're standing right there with you. And they might be physically inside your facilities with you going through this journey. You should expect hiccups. Hiccups are not just the weekend that you do the cutover. Hiccups might occur for 3 months after. So as your environment starts to settle, as you start your process of putting new code changes in, as monthly reports start to happen, as customers start to do things that they don't do every day, you're going to have problems. As you tune the system, you probably oversize that environment initially because you don't want problems, but as you start to scale it back, maybe you then run into some problems. So don't take your eye off the ball after the initial cutover. You might think that you're through this and it's going great. My guidance on this is you're not really going great until probably 3 months after. And that is our best practices, and we have 20 minutes for questions if there are any.